So, hi everyone, welcome to episode 6 on beliefs. Hi Serena, it's so lovely to see you.
Sally, long time no see. Here we are. Does it feel like a new year now? Well, we don't know because we have to confess we are pre-recording this, but I'm hoping that we're in a really good place here in the new year and that everyone listening is enjoying the fresh start that everyone's had at the start of 2024.
Amazing. So, what are we talking about today, Serena?
We are talking about beliefs today. So, an incredibly important part of the behaviour change conversation and something that, again, is one of those kind of cornerstones in terms of how we might go about changing our behaviour when we consider first and foremost what our beliefs actually are. So, what beliefs do we hold that actually inform those things that we do in our life and arguably anything that we would like to change in our life as well? So,
Yeah.
what significance do your beliefs hold for you? Where do they come from? Do you have any particular barriers towards changing things in your life? So these are all the juicy things that we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about how you might consciously bring your awareness to those beliefs that you may also want to change as well. Which leads me to ask you, Sally, do you have any interesting beliefs? Something that you'd like to share with us? Not to
Well,
throw you off the deep end, of course, but
because being a hypnotherapist, I work with people's subconscious beliefs, where those beliefs come from. But recently I've been sort of exploring the world of, this is going to sound really geeky, but electric health, which is to do with it's based on the idea that we live in an electric universe, that the predominant force in nature is electric rather than gravity being the predominant force. And I came across this author who I've recently interviewed for my podcast, The Menopause Mindset. She's called Eileen McCusick, and in her book Electric Body, Electric Health, she talks about, there's a chapter on world pain. And we've been going through, at the time of recording this, Israel's at war with Palestine, and there's just a lot of world pain. There's a lot that we are exposed to, there's a lot that we're experiencing. And something really beautiful that she says is that multiple realities can be true at once, so it doesn't have to be either or. She considers herself a bothist, which basically means for her, just because something might be true for one person and something different might be true for another person, it doesn't mean those realities kind of cancel each other out. It's both and she talks about it in her line of work in the context of the biochemical paradigm that the medical profession currently exists in is true, alongside the energetic, the electromagnetic, physics world of our health. That is also true as well. So when I came across this idea of bothism, the fact that it's got a name, I did try and research. I popped it into Google, not much came up. So I don't know whether it's a new word or something that she invented, but the fact that it has a word is good. It makes me feel good, because also I've been experiencing a little bit of grief and also freedom as well, which is seemingly two conflicting emotions. Grief because my dog's gone, so grief that he's gone, but also a newfound freedom in not having him around, not having that routine that I have to do every single day. And so, yeah, I've been enjoying that as a new belief system, which has very much been informing a new way of thinking for me. So thank you for asking.
Well, there's a lot there to unpack, Sally. You've just actually started off the podcast with
A huge
about
amount of philosophy.
10 juicy things to unravel when we're thinking about beliefs and how they might inform our behaviour. I just want to say, actually, just one thing. So there's an amazing book called The Body Electric by Robert Becker, and I think that might be similar to, or along a similar vein for anyone listening, that also maybe we could put those books in the show notes for people that are interested in kind of the science behind kind of electricity, certainly from the body perspective of the book I mentioned, and sounds like more broadly speaking for the book that you mentioned as well.
I think she does reference that book, but interestingly, she does talk a lot about mind as well, and how mind, as opposed to brain, mind is non-local, and she believes that the mind is actually inside the electromagnetic field that we have. It's in like standing waves, these waves that she can read, and that's how you can like pick up on people's energies and stuff. But I didn't expect to be talking about this in terms of beliefs, but
But
it's all
you took
interesting, I suppose.
it. Yeah. Well,
I
going back to
did.
the idea of bothism, I mean, and you're talking about kind of holding these conflicting beliefs. I mean, I personally think this is just the human condition, is that we have and both,
Yeah.
that we have, that things can sit side by side. And I remember writing a blog post years ago on the contradictory nature of being human, that we are by
Interesting.
nature very contradictory creatures, that we can hold these conflicting emotions and beliefs. And part of our journey is in reconciling that for ourselves and kind of making sense of how we want that to appear in the world. So what we do, again, I'm often talking, I realize, in these podcasts around figuring stuff out for yourself and figuring out then what you do with that. Like, what do you do with this information? And actually, maybe for some of it, it's around just accepting that you have contradictory beliefs, as I said, because it is very much the human condition. And certainly with the things that you're saying, it might be, in our lifetime that we certainly can't prove much of what might be contributing to those conflicting beliefs. So in terms of what you said around the mind being not localized, non-localized, is very much straying again. I think we find ourselves in the spiritual world quite a lot in our conversations, don't we, Sally? But
Yeah.
there's so much that we don't know as human beings. We just don't know, and some of that will be because where we are in terms of time. Science has come a long, long way, and our understanding of the world has come a long, long way. So what was normal, inverted commas, 50 years ago in terms of even medicine is certainly not now, and many things would never be done now that were done a long time ago. And so we have to admit and make peace with the fact that our evolutions as humans will see change happen. And so I think when you're open-minded in terms of your beliefs, you're open-minded to many things that can't be proven or disproven. And so we may hold contradiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely agree. I remember interviewing somebody, Kate Codrington, on my podcast, and I think I came up with a conflicting belief, and she said, "Why is that not okay? Why is it not
Mm.
okay to hold on to a conflicting belief? We are messy humans. Let's embrace it. We're not supposed to have it all figured out. If there was a perfect answer to everything, there'll be no point in life evolving. There'd be no point in life. Life itself is trying to figure itself out in many different ways. And I think for us, when we get stuck in a belief that's actually no longer serving us and we can't change that belief, that can be quite problematic. Maybe there's reasons why we don't want to change that belief. Maybe we've been really vested in that belief for many, many years. Maybe we're making, I was kind of think back to, big oil, big pharma having real vested interests in not believing in climate change, for example, or not believing in energy medicine.
Mm.
Those beliefs are really deeply embedded in that economy, in that culture. And so why would they change? And we have our own versions of that within ourselves, I think, that we don't necessarily want to change. If we've been behaving a certain way for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden we think, oh my God, that's not right, or there's something in there that I want to change, we have to come to terms with how we've been acting or how we've been dealing with certain situations for many years that might not have been working for us. And there's a grief in that, there's a loss in that we have to be willing to experience. I'm kind of going to the end of the podcast episode here by talking about all of this.
Fast forward.
I know.
I think so if I take a little backtrack, I think, and talk about something that maybe is more practical as well.
Yeah.
So certainly in the world that I'm in, where I spend most of my time now teaching healthcare professionals how to elicit change in others, I look at belief as part of the foundations course that I teach, because again, I believe it's another one of those really important things that we know from a foundational point of view, and we at least acknowledge plays a part in someone's healthcare journey, for example. And when you're looking at this from that perspective, what I'm interested in is broadly speaking what we've discussed so far. So people's belief systems, and what's really juicy, which we won't have probably time to go into today, but maybe for a future podcast, is where those beliefs come from. And so kind of childhood experience that informs those things, and the things that kind of set up who you are and why you believe particular things in terms of your culture, your religion, your upbringing, where you were in the world, where you were in the country, where you were in terms of micro cultures and microclimate, all those things, all those really juicy things that you can pull apart. But also I'm interested in it, if kind of fast forwarding to what is essentially the placebo version of belief. So how we can actually work with people's belief systems from that placebo point of view to really enhance what they undertake, for example, in a healthcare situation. So I'm not talking about placebo effect in terms of duping someone or using deception, but when we know how powerful the brain is, so what you tell yourself becomes your truth.
Yeah.
So how we can program a brain to believe a particular thing, which is why the placebo is so powerful. By just merely telling you, for example, this pill will do X, and evoking that when it's just a sugar pill, for example, the power of your brain, how we can start to use that understanding to actually help people and use it in a really, really positive way. So I'm very interested from a psychological point of view as to how we might, if you like, manipulate what we understand to help people. And that is incredibly exciting.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Because beliefs, really, they form the foundation of what we expect to happen.
Yeah.
You've read The Expectation Effect, haven't you?
Yeah, so I recommended it in the course that I taught as well, and it's a fantastic book that I recommend everyone reads. But yeah, The Expectation Effect, which is essentially this. What we're talking about is the power of placebo, the power of belief, the power of when we have an expectation of something, how that impacts how we perceive, feel, and experience the world as a result of that. And that, as I said, we can do things to manipulate what people may expect.
Wasn't there something in that book about if teachers expect their pupils to have better results, they do? And the teachers that didn't expect their pupils that they weren't going to do well, they didn't perform better.
Yeah, so that's a study that I think has been replicated a few times, and that is essentially what's seen. Yeah, for sure. Which I'm very, very mindful of as someone who teaches.
Yeah, I bet you are. Yeah, me too, actually. Yeah, I've recognised it. And also, like, in giving therapy, or could you give therapy? Or holding space for people, holding the highest vision of your client in your mind and expecting that they will change, or they will meet their own goals or their own changes that they want for themselves. I think that's really important. If you've got a therapist that doesn't expect their clients to change, that's stuck in negative Nancy mode, I wonder how much of that is actually going to affect the outcome, because all of your perceptions will be skewed.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in that therapeutic setting, you know, again, I've probably bored people on the podcast from previous episodes with this, but, you know, things like this, change starts with you as a practitioner. So I
Yeah.
always talk about being what I call, personally, I call the integrated practitioner. So it's that practitioner that's done the work themselves, that understands how it feels, what their thoughts and beliefs are, what they're presenting with, what their boundaries are. So it's really important to kind of do the work, to know that, to bring your best version of yourself into your practice. And that will absolutely feed into what you've said around what beliefs are you already coming with as the practitioner. And being able to, certainly in a healthcare setting, this then goes into looking very specifically at the beliefs you hold around someone's progression, at the beliefs you hold around empowering someone to step into their own healing journey and not feel that you're entirely responsible for it. So do you believe, for example, that as the surgeon, you are God, you are the one that's going to fix them? Or do you enter that interaction and empower that person to be in charge of their own healing? That you're merely a facilitator to that, but there's so much that they can do for themselves. So how you're presenting will impact how you show up, your demeanor, your body language, your communication, the actual language that you use. Are you using empowering language to help someone, first of all, feel and think positively about what they're undertaking? So as practitioners, we're in an incredibly powerful position to start that person on a positive pathway to change, or we can take them down a negative pathway. So that feeds exactly into what you're saying. And it's the same for anyone that's dealing with people where they're undertaking some kind of change, whether that's learning and they're growing through education, whether that is a healthcare journey, whether that's a therapist journey. So you as a practitioner are in an extremely powerful position, and that's not to be underestimated.
Yeah, I think we do have to remember the position of power or status that we do have, and how just by the thoughts that we think, just by the thoughts and the beliefs that we are marinating ourselves in daily, the stuff that we read, the politics that we have, all of it will inform the energy with which we are going into the work that we're doing, the healing work. But something I wanted to come back to was about this idea of practitioner. And I wrote down, aren't we all just practitioners? Because we're all practitioners. If there's somebody that's listening to this that isn't a healthcare practitioner, that maybe, I don't know, works in an office or they're an accountant or something like that, we're all having relationships with people. You've got colleagues, you've got partners, you've got children, sisters, brothers, friends, whoever. And in that sense, we're all practitioners of those relationships. And so the expectations that we have, we bring into every single relationship that we have. So I think even if you're not a healthcare practitioner, you can certainly learn from healthcare practitioners in the way that they evoke change from their
I think,
patients.
yeah, 100%. I mean, this starts with you as a human, number one. I think you're absolutely right. And thank you for, I think it's a really important distinction to make, actually. I think, as you've said, this is about relationship and instilling positivity, if you like, in relationships as well. So I think it's a really lovely thing to ponder for parents. So what beliefs are you instilling in your children? As two women without children, I certainly don't want to slip
Whoops.
into preaching to what parents should be doing or thinking. So massive disclaimer from me. I won't speak for Sally on this.
Yeah.
You are a step parent, I should say, aren't you? So
I
are
am a
you?
stepmom,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So you can speak to that. I'll step away from that part of the conversation that you can navigate. But I think just parents, you know, And actually, before we came on this podcast, we slipped into just talking about our childhoods for a minute, which we didn't bring to the podcast, but it might sneak in now. But just thinking about the beliefs that were instilled in me as a child and how that came from my parents, for better or worse. No parent will get it perfect. There's no such thing. So, but thinking when you think consciously about what you want to instill in your children, it very much starts with those what feel like very simple conversations, but you're again starting someone, a little mini human being, on their positive journey or their negative journey. And again, it's not that they're fixed; they're not immutable. The whole idea of behavior change is at any point in that pathway we can disrupt it. But if you can start someone off on a positive pathway, and as you were saying, with all the interactions that we have and all the relationships, if you can think about the belief that you would like someone to hold about themselves and potentially your relationship, that's really beautiful, because you have the opportunity to make that very positive.
Yeah, I think perhaps sometimes we underestimate the amount of influence that we have in all of our interactions, whether that's you just pop into the post office, going to the supermarket, and now we have those automated tills and stuff, but I still quite like going to have a chat with little Beryl on the checkout.
It
It brightens my day.
Beryl from Beryl? Is it really Beryl? Is that, or have you made that up?
I've made that up, which probably shows my stereotyping.
We're going to get a letter from Beryl, aren't we? Poor Beryl.
I know. I love Beryl, though. She brightens my day.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I think, again, just knowing and being more mindful then when we're thinking about belief and the belief that we're instilling in others. So again, if we're drawing upon what we've said in other episodes, and certainly I've said this many times, that human beings are not hardwired to change. We will do what we need to stay safe.
Mm-hmm.
And we also are constantly looking for danger, and we're looking for threat, and we're looking for evidence of things going wrong, essentially. So what we're often doing is we are sadly more hardwired towards looking for and focusing on the negative, arguably as a means to safety.
Yeah.
So we're often creating these self-perpetuating stories and looking for evidence that we lack or that feed into kind of the set of beliefs that we arguably all hold about ourselves, that feel inferior in some way or an imposter or lacking in confidence. So if you have the opportunity to not contribute to someone's negative story about themselves, not that you will always be aware of that, because you can absolutely have someone's best interest and still not realise that it's impacting someone negatively. But if you can be mindful and knowing that you do have an impact, what you say, your words and your own behaviours hugely impact another human being, that's a good place to start. I don't know what you think about that, Sally.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the primal part of our brain is always looking for danger. We always have those protective parts. And in RTT, I do a modality called role, function, and purpose. So if someone comes to me with anxiety, we'll talk to that part of them and we'll get them to say, I'm the part of Sally who has this anxiety. I'm the part of Sally who created this anxiety. And my only role in Sally's life is to, and then you'll put an ending on that sentence. So someone invariably will say to protect her. And you say, well, how is the anxiety protecting her? Well, it's stopping her from going out and socializing, because if she goes out and socializes, people might see the real her. And if they see the real her, they might not like her. And if they don't like her, then that means she'll be outcast from society. So that's often what we see in things like anxiety. It often comes down to protection, whether you're protecting someone from a difficult feeling, a difficult emotion. That belief is usually there, or that behavior is usually there to protect someone. But coming back to what you said about childhood as well, when we're in childhood, we are essentially in hypnosis. Our brainwaves are in that theta state. We're born in delta, so we're basically born asleep. And we our brainwaves start speeding up. I can't remember the ages. I think it's like when we get to, well, I think when we get to age 8, that's when the brainwaves start speeding up again. But essentially, when we are children, we're wide open. We are a sponge. We're in hypnosis, and we are absorbing the world around us without question. We do not question it. It just sinks in like a sponge. So all of our foundational sort of core beliefs are kind of created then. And then you take that into your adult life and you start acting out some of those beliefs. And until you go back and take a look at what happened to you as a child, you'll always be acting out those beliefs, those unconscious beliefs that will drive habits, behaviors, choices, all of that stuff that may or may not be serving you. So yes, I think we do have, I wouldn't call it a duty, maybe it is a duty, but we certainly have an option to study our beliefs, like know what they are, and then work to changing them. It is possible to change our beliefs. I think people think they are stuck. I'm generalizing here, but a lot of people think that they're stuck with certain beliefs or that they can't change their beliefs. And certainly beliefs can get hardwired. But the wonderful thing about the brain is that it's not hardwired. We do have the ability to change those neural pathways. So we can change beliefs. And I think we're evolving all the time. I certainly think that, I don't know if you believe in astrology, but some signs are more immutable. Some signs are more mutable and shiftable and malleable and pliable. But I think to a lesser or greater degree, or a greater or lesser degree, we can shift. We don't have to be on rails, as my dad says. But then you're talking about control. If you are on rails and you are like, you do like things to be a certain way and you have hyper control, which might lead to other problems, then that might be something worth investigating as well. There might be a belief underpinning that too.
Do you feel like you're open to your beliefs changing about things that you currently believe? Does
Yeah.
that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. I quite like a shift in worldview. I don't mind that happening. I mean, not to the extent where if something's backed by science, if something's interesting, if something really grabs my attention and has meaning, because if it doesn't have meaning, like I probably wouldn't develop a new religion, for example, unless I felt it had absolute meaning to me. Like if my husband was a Jew, I might adopt Judaism because that has meaning. But if something's abstract, it doesn't have meaning, then I probably wouldn't adopt that belief.
I love this because it feels like I did study a little bit of philosophy at university, and it feels actually like we're going into philosophical discussion. And also,
Yeah.
I used to teach. So for about 8 years, I actually used to teach teachers and teaching assistants. I used to teach them developmental psychology. And this to me feeds into, or starts to feel like it's feeding into, because once you start to look at your beliefs and your belief systems, we start to then stray into the idea, this is actually slightly off topic, but kind of not, into morals and ethics. And then you
Yeah.
start to think about, so for example, as you were saying that, the reason I've gone there is because as you were saying that, and I asked you the question, I hadn't asked myself the question yet, and I instantly thought there are some beliefs that I would never change. Like, I don't believe you should ever kill someone. So now we're going into kind of the ethics and the morals that we hold, and actually, arguably, there are going to be a set of beliefs that potentially people hold that don't fundamentally change. And I know as I'm saying that now, people are thinking, but what if it was self-defense and da da da, and they're going to all the scenarios, and that's why they're interesting discussions to have, because we're then going into those deeper kind of morals and which are different to ethics, obviously, but the things that you live your life by, that you may feel some of them are unshakable.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm watching Married at First Sight at the moment.
Oh,
Okay. Don't
ooh,
judge me.
I've
It's
not
actually
gone.
really good.
Oh my! I'm sure there are
It's
lots of people who agree.
it's actually really good because it brings up a lot about relationships. So there's three relationship counselors, and it reminds me there's a couple on there that got married, Peggy and oh God, what is his name? Oh, I can't remember his name now. But
Bob. Call
so
him Bob. Bob.
Peggy and Bob. So Peggy has very high morals.
Hmm.
Um, she wants children. Family is the most important thing to her. She likes to party, but she doesn't really like. So Bob has a hobby, a gaming hobby, and he gets paid to do silly things like squat with his bum towards the camera. Okay. And she's humiliated. She's absolutely horrified by this. And because he wants to be with her, he's had to fundamentally change like some of his beliefs and I guess his values. Maybe it's more values. But you see how they both have to adapt and mold and shift in
Mm.
order to preserve the relationship. Now, there's another couple where Jay and Luke will fundamentally not change. Why should I change? I shouldn't have to change. No one should have to change. It should just work.
Right.
And the therapist is trying to say to them, change is growth. Like if you want this relationship to work, clearly
Mm.
she loves you and you love her, but because you won't change your
Mm.
beliefs, then the relationship's going to break down. So
Mm.
again, it's that cost. I will change my beliefs, but what's the cost? And am I willing to pay that price? I think
Mm.
obviously there are certain things we wouldn't, like I would never kill anyone. Um, the cost is too high for me to change that belief. But I don't know. I mean, you're the one that's the specialist in murder, so
Yeah, never say never, Sally. um,
right.
yeah. But yeah,
You
that'll be the podcast.
never know.
Never say never. No, more seriously, I think what's interesting from what you're saying is you do get to choose. So you're looking at conscious belief change,
Yeah,
and so that is something that you get to do if you feel like it will serve you and it has a purpose.
yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, and I think that that's also important for people to remember is you're you're the maker of your own destiny. You get to choose what you want to believe in, and you get to change and adapt the beliefs that you hold. And I would certainly like kind of going back to what we were saying earlier on. Certainly, there's some beliefs I don't think that will ever change for me, but I expect and I'm open to, as I always say, every day's a school day, for some of my beliefs to change over time. Why wouldn't they? Because as we grow, as we change as humans, and as we grow in our own lives, and we understand more about the world, understand more about ourselves. So going back to that self-awareness that we talked about in a previous episode, as we learn more about ourselves and who we are, that naturally, as a result of growth, our beliefs change.
yeah.
And I would always personally want to be someone that was open to that and not fixed and static in that way. That for me, that feels very stagnating.
Yeah, I think if you read a lot as well and you are open to new perspectives, then I think the likelihood that you change your beliefs easy, you have more flexibility in terms of your ability to change and shift. I think that grows and increases the more you read, because I can read a book 1 minute about something and then read something else that's quite different and then go, oh, okay, but it comes back to that bothist thing. You know,
Mm,
both realities can be true depending on which way you look at it. And so the more you read, the more your perspective zooms out and out and out and out and out, and you can hold differing beliefs and opinions And of course, you measure them against your value system as to ones that you want to take on and work with.
Which, actually, a juicy question has come to mind. Are there particular people that you would believe more? Because I think this is important when we're looking at how you construct a belief system as an adult, not a child, because obviously we're going to look at parents there. Who in society do you believe? Where do you get your information from?
Yeah, well, I definitely would believe. So, for example, Eileen McCusick, she starts her book by saying that she's an absolute skeptic. And that because of her skepticism, she's done a lot of reading to try and satisfy her skepticism. And because someone has come out and said that they are a skeptic and very critical and have done the reading, done the work, formulated their thinking, that makes me trust them more because of that skeptical nature. So I trust. I mean, I used to think that doctors, would have the highest level of integrity, but that's not always the case. There are some books that I've read by doctors. I just think, no, God, no, I just don't agree with you at all. Not naming any names. Yeah, I mean, certainly. What about you?
I barely believe anyone.
Love it. You're like the ultimate skeptic.
I don't know. Well, no, yeah, I'm being tongue in cheek here. I would have to, for me, belief comes from a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
And doing my own research to validate it for myself. So I'm a big believer in not believing people on face value, which sounds terrible. But bearing in mind the two caveats I've given there, and I've not thought this through, so this is absolute raw thinking here. I've not thought about this even before the podcast. It just came out. So forgive me if it's kind of messy and I've not thought it through yet. But so, for example, friends that I've had in my life since I was 3 years old, like my best friends I've known since I was 3, 7 and 15, they could say anything to me and I believe them. But that comes from a long-term relationship. So I've known them for so long, there's nothing for them to gain by lying to me. I've known them for long enough that I instantly have belief there. Certain members of my family, so I would believe on face value, certain members I wouldn't. That also comes from a long-term relationship with them.
Yeah.
And then validation for myself. So I always need to go and validate information for myself. So I don't believe a doctor just because they're a doctor. And I think the reason I wanted to ask you the question was I have seen some things lately that are, maybe doctors saying things online and they've been 100% inaccurate. Not just this is opinion. I'm talking about facts that are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The science is wrong. They've misinterpreted data from peer-reviewed journals. But because they're a doctor, instantly there's a belief associated with the title. And I think it's very dangerous when people have a particular status in society, like psychologists. Just because someone says they're a psychologist or a doctor or a particular scientist, go and do your own research. I think that's the reason I wanted to say this, really, is because I think people have to go and validate for themselves information and do your own I always get this as a tongue twister. Do your own due diligence. Go and research things for yourself and ensure that you know where information is coming from.
Makes me think of the business coaches that promise you're going to make a 6-figure income, in 6 months if you follow my protocol.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, go and validate that. Absolutely go and validate it. In actual fact, sorry, I've just totally steamrolled what you're saying there. It goes right back to, so obviously I worked in forensic practice as well for a long time, and having worked with people who've done some incredibly dangerous things, you know, but very, very charismatic. They would want me to believe them on face value when I work with them. And I imagine that for many people, it's why they got away with the crimes they did. They can groom you. They're very believable. No, but the long-term relationship that you have with them, where you get to continue, and this is part of psychology in practice in a forensic setting, where you talk to someone for a very, very long time. Over time, what you're doing is you're getting someone to retell their story again and again and again, and kind of building the rapport. And it's over time that you start to see the holes in their story.
Yeah.
And going away and then cross-validating that with police reports, victim statements, etc. So arguably some of that for me has come from having encountered people who are extremely believable on face value, meeting them, day one.
Yeah.
But actually, I think that's just another example of, the length of time that you know someone. So being able to evidence your need to believe what they're saying over time. Is it valid that I believe them over time? And validating what someone's saying.
Yeah.
And alongside that, not just believing someone because of a title. And people, yeah. I'll stop there because
it's trust, isn't it? It's coming back to trust. I'm not quite sure how we got onto this. You asked me a question, didn't you? How do you know who do you believe?
Who do you believe and why? So, like, who would you believe, and who do you believe, and where does that come from?
Yeah. People that ask a lot of questions, and I don't think we should take stuff on face value. I think that's how hysteria spreads and misinformation spreads. We certainly saw that in the pandemic. So I'm just trying to think, is there anything else? What can we talk about? What causes beliefs to change, and how can we change our beliefs to help us change our behaviours? One of those things, seek out new information and perspectives, think critically, which is coming back to what you said. Self-reflect and examine your own beliefs. Don't even take your beliefs at face value. We've talked about all of this. Focus on what you will gain.
Very organically, I think, as well.
Yeah. And just something that I wanted to come back to, actually, was a strong emotional charge. So that's how the RTT sessions work that I do. We invoke a strong emotional charge. Beliefs change when we're charged, when we're passionate, when we feel something as innately true. And I think that is how often you can get sidelined into beliefs that you don't believe, and how you can get into cults. But also that is how you can perhaps find that change within yourself. So I put down music. Like, for me, music will change my state. Is a state change a belief change, going from hopeless to hopeful?
I think this is an episode 2. I think we'll do a part 2 on this, because this is going now into me. Because when I describe what I do, I always say that I specialise in behaviour change and peak performance. And peak performance is related to state change. But again, you're picking up on something really interesting there, because actually this can be highly maladaptive, highly nefarious in terms of people brainwashing you into doing something that is actually, you're going to change your behaviour in a way that suits them but not you. And I think this is a beautiful way to segue into people coming back for a second series where we pick this conversation up, Sally, because this is a juicy bit. This is people using what people know about behaviour change to manipulate and coerce.
Right.
It's almost, it's the darker side of behaviour change.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God.
Beautiful way.
I totally want to record. Yeah, isn't it just? And you've got like a dark background now, the sunset. And we've gone.
We're in. Yeah, totally. But also, it's really important because, again, you don't ever have light without shadow. So actually, to understand the light, the positive aspects of behaviour change, we need to understand the shadow. So actually looking a little bit more, I think, at some of the shadow parts of behaviour change, which include altering state, maybe where people's beliefs have been forced to change, where people have been forced to change, and actually what that looks like and how we can avoid it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something I'm passionate about myself, having been into some sort of dodgy situations. I mean, I've been in the self-development world. I picked up my first Louise Hay book at 14, so I've been in this world for a long time and done quite a few weird things and culty things, and I've come back to having a real sense of discernment after being sucked into memberships and stuff that weren't particularly, I don't think,
Mm.
full of integrity. So yeah, let's wrap things up there. What a lovely first season, Serena.
Honestly, it's been an absolute joy. It's been so nice to spend some more time going kind of deeply in some of the topics that we touch upon in our chats, but we certainly
Yeah.
don't do this, do we? So thank you
No,
so
not at
much.
all. I really hope that that you have enjoyed it. You've taken stuff away from it. You're eager for more. If you've got any questions, just reach out. We'll put our links in the show notes. Reach out to us. We're here. We love answering questions. Well, I'm speaking on behalf of you. I think you're the same as me, because questions like invoke that thought process, and I know myself differently as I've answered someone's question. I don't know if you're the same.
Yeah, I love it. I always integrate kind of Q&As into any work I do. And actually, I think if people have not just questions, but anything that they'd like us to cover in future episodes, let us know. We obviously have a plethora of ideas to cover ourselves, but if there's anything burning on your brain and you would like us to cover it, then do let us know. And we'll, again, leave all the contact details below.
Awesome. All right, everyone. See you later.
Thank you. See you again soon. Boom.